Alright, this morning we're just going to tackle a wee bit of maintenance here really quick. So we're finished bulk of our slurry, and after getting the second cut done, we actually give the tank a good wash. Probably the least looked after bit of equipment nearly in most farms, slurry tankers, especially older ones, just because they get covered in dirt, nearly pointless washing them. I didn't just wash it down for the aesthetic pleasure. I washed it down so I could check it over to see is there anything that needs attention, especially on this by here at the back. It wasn't long till I found this. So there is our first split there, and I'm looking at the other pipes here, checking over. I don't see any splits in those, but I do see areas where it's starting to come white, and that means that it's getting ready to split. But this one here would be under the most pressure, because when this arm lifts up and down, this here would bend back and forth, so it would be always the one that would probably take most of the strain. Now, I did look for this pipe. The place that builds this is just on my doorstep, literally only 2 miles away from my house, but I wasn't able to get them on the phone yesterday. I think they were closed, so I was up in a local dealership getting something else, and I got a different pipe, but it's the same size, just might be a slightly different colour, so hopefully it will do the job. Right. Alright, well that's the first job done. There is other places here I have to watch, here for instance. So when that folds up, it's rubbing again this, so I'll have to do something to sort that before it rubs right through that pipe. Now, these drop pipes are starting to crack open. Some of them have already opened up. So that just comes from the fold, and every time you lift this up and down, this here does this, and it does this, and it does this, and if you do that with anything long enough, it's going to break. So what I'm going to do to save a few quid and try get another little bit of life out of them is I'm just going to swap them around. Now, what'll tell the tale here is, will these things come off with it ripping? Yeah, this could be a problem. But just glued in place with animal sticky juice. There. That's it. Alright, somebody's to ask where Bailey is. Oh, she's here. She's very close to me today because there's thunder in the air and she's a wee bit afraid of thunder, so she keeps beside me. Just done these ones here on the arms. Didn't even have to do them inner ones there at all, but these ones that hang straight down don't really tend to bend, so there's no problem. They're as good as the day they went on. So it was just these outer ones that were really bad. Anything that was starting to crack I changed. Next thing I need to do, you might remember from the last video, is I need to do something with the seal on this stone trap. So after removing the stone trap door without any issues whatsoever, I want to remove this old adhesive. So I don't know if you can hear, but it's absolutely lashing outside now, so stick on our adhesive here. We'll just slap that on there. This has been sitting now overnight. There, let's stick that back on now. I did think about modifying this, because it'd be quite simple. I'm thinking about taking that nut off eventually and putting another nut on it and welding a large piece that you can turn by hand, just with a handle on it the whole way across, that you can turn it back and forth and you don't have to use a wrench, because it doesn't take a whole pile of pressure to squeeze that seal in. It just means you're out in the field and you don't have a wrench. You can do it by hand. It'll be much faster as well. There. So one of the other important things in this is obviously to grease it. There are a lot of grease pints going around there, so I don't think you need to see me going around with a grease gun. You know yourself, there's ones here on each moving part that needs regular to be greased. You're better off sometimes to grease it when it's folded out, and there's less pressure on the joints and you seem to get more grease in. Another thing that will need grease is obviously the wide angle shaft, but there is one place underneath here that some, like myself, mightn't do so often. Right, so we're underneath the tanker here, and this is our brake mechanism, and there is our little hydraulic ram, and you step your foot on the pedal, oil comes down through this pipe and it pushes that ram out, that pushes this forward, and that's what applies your brakes. It works with the back brakes on the tractor, so everything works together. But this is an awkward wee spot to get in at, and sometimes it gets overlooked. Now I washed this down, I'm surprised there's actually in really good condition underneath here. And normally this would be the place where you get a lot of rust, but there are a lot of grease pints in here, some of which haven't seen grease in a while. Alright, before we leave here, there are two there in the corners, and I have never greased them before. I've never seen them actually before. I can also tell I've never greased it because that nipple is pointing in towards the axle, so that's no good. Yeah. She's clogged anyway. I have a different grease gun here. It's a shorter snout on it. Nope. Alright, so I have to give up on this one. There's just no way I can get a grease gun on the end of that. So what I'll do is I'll tip up to the local garage the next time I'm up there, and I'll pick up 290-degree nipples for that, and that will fix that problem. It's the same on the other side. I'm not going to even try to grease that one because it's going to be the very same thing. I don't know how they expect anybody to grease that. So before we finish up on that tank above, one other thing we need to address is the pipe. Now, we have two pipes here. Usually one pipe is left over on the other farm, so we use that kind of as a nurse tank when we're piping in the springtime. So it's always nice to have a pipe over there so you're not constantly sucking a load out here, having to put on the pipe, take it with you, take it off. You get what I mean. So you might be fit to see that, but if I put a bend on it, that pipe there is split open in two places. It's split down here as well. The other pipe is the one I mainly use, but it has gone soft. The actual opposite. You can see it there. You might be fit to see a crease. You might be fit to see that line. When you're sucking up a load, especially when you get into the bottom, this squeezes in, nearly closes in, and again that's restricting the slurry from going into the tank. These used to be about 3 foot longer, but we cut them off every so often because what happens is the end starts to shrink in, and then that reduces the amount of flow going into the tank, and that makes it harder for the tank to suck out the slurry. So another time you go around, you take a wee bit off it just to relieve that, and as you take small bits off over a long period of time, the pipe doesn't be long getting shorter. The issue with short pipes like that, when you put them into a tank that's 8 foot deep, for instance, you have to reverse much closer to the end of the tank to get the pipe down to the very bottom, and when it's short it can't rest on the bottom. It just faces straight down, and it's a tendency when you come into the last few loads sucking the floor of the tank, if you get me. So there's a new pipe on. One thing I meant to do to this, when this bar was put on, we took the hook off, we never put the hook back on again, so I want to see have I got long enough bolts here, take these off and put the extra hook back on, because that pipe, well, it can't be carried, it's a bit longer now. The other one just sat kind of to here, and that was the length of it. This one's at least 5 foot longer, so I want to put that hook back on. The biggest thing now is, where is it? Where are you? Alright, I was looking around here, and then, lo and behold, I found it. I knew it was somewhere sitting odd. Let's throw that back on. just looking here, and this plate goes under this to keep it just the right distance out. This could fit under there. Do the same thing. Alright, so that's the pipe on there now, and that's much better to have that like that, and keeps it up off the ground. It's not trailing around the place of getting caught. It's a much longer pipe that will make life a bit easier, and hopefully a little bit easier on the tank as well. So it's a Sunday, and my video has just been posted there a couple of hours ago. We featured this in our last video where we had an issue with our compressor clutch wasn't fully releasing, and it was causing friction, which was causing overheating. At the minute I had took the belt off it so I could drive the tractor. I just hung the belt up. Not a great thing to do, but it wouldn't go around the fan. So to get the belt off, I'd probably have to loosen all those Allen keys and take the fan off to get the belt out around it. So I just hung it like this here. My intentions was to leave the tractor pretty much unused. But a guy called Gary has put up a comment, which was very interesting, caught my eye straight away. Hence the reason I'm up here. And he said that friction, he says, on the front plate is caused by the front plate, not enough clearance. Which made sense. That's what I kind of knew by looking at it. It was rubbing. So he says to fix that, there's a little 13mm nut. Remove it, which I did. The front plate will pop off, and behind that there should be a couple of little shims to keep that front plate out enough so it's not doing what it's doing there now. And all you have to do is put in an extra shim. Problem solved. Alright, so I couldn't get another shim that size. I have these copper washers here. Could use one of those, but I thought then to myself, I'd take an ordinary washer and I'd just pare it down to the right size, just exact, well, close enough to the exact same diameter. And that should work. I can take one of these, or two of these out, because this is slightly thicker, and put that in, and just increase the width ever so slightly. Alright, we have the plate back on, and look, it runs freely. Well, there's the air conditioning off, and there's no movement of that now. And there's no screeching noise. It's running lovely and free. I'll go up here and turn on the air conditioning. It cuts in, and now the whole thing runs. So I've run this yoke for a day now. I've topped 2 fields with it, which does heat the tractor up nicely. And there's no more issues with that compressor. So that was a seriously good tip that I got from Gary. And I can't thank him enough. That's the part of social media that I really like. And people offer their bit of advice and stuff, and it's helped me more times. So I do appreciate that. I would have been picking up a new compressor for that today. And I would have had to pay the other guy to come out and regas it because it wouldn't be his fault. I've skipped all that. And now I have a compressor just with a simple little shim. It's fixed. This little tractor is quite busy here on the farm. Now that we have the bonnet off it, I think it'd be no harm to give it a quick service. Now I had this air filter out a couple of days ago, and I blew it out of an air line because it was rightly dusty. So it'll look cleaner now than it did then. Right, slightly different filter. Well, this is the proper one for it, I'm told. In, job done. There it is. This little O-ring holding it. There it is. Simple as that. Well, that's bits of dirt up and not much. All in all, it's not too bad. There's a bit of gunk just there. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, just in the bottom of it. So I'm going to take this down, give it a good hot wash out, and put it back together again. You'll hear it run, and the sound will change when the filter's full. Oh, the noise changing now. Right, so we can start up now and hopefully it'll not airlock. I don't see any diesel leaks. Let that run for a few minutes and see what happens. Alright. My usual oil catcher is down underneath the digger. So I'm using my wife's gardening bucket here, hopefully wash before she comes home from work, and she'll never know the difference. But it's handy enough. We catch the oil underneath this. The bung is way up underneath the brackets of that loader in another awkward wee spot. Well, let's get it loosened. There we are. It's definitely time that was serviced. Alright, so I'll put a little bit of fresh oil around that seal. I can just screw on this filter. We're right up there. I'm not going to put any more into it because I know when I run this tractor a bit, that oil level is going to drop. So I'll have to probably give it a little touch up. If you're ever changing oil in anything, run it for a bit and then check it again. It's very important that you come back and check it again after a few minutes or so. Because you'll find most of the time the oil level does drop. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, but you don't need to see that. The air compressor's done, the air filter's done, the diesel filter's done. That in-cab filter is up there. We done that about 3 months ago. I do want to do the hydraulic filter, which is over here on the back end eventually, but it's just in there, so I want to change that soon enough as well. I just don't have one here with me today. But otherwise than that, the good news is this tractor can go back together again and go back to work. I was using this yoke here earlier on and there was a rattle, and that rattle is here a long time and I know it is off. And now that we're rooting at it, I'll just fix it and be done with it. When you come around here, in here where the turbo is, there's a heat shield here. It was bolted over there on that side, but that's what it's doing now on the tractor. Now there was a little bracket here, I'll show you in a minute, that's why that bolt is loose, but I'm just hammering away like that. That bracket used to come down and used to be attached to that stainless steel mount there where the turbo was attached. Now that we have it stripped, or now that we were working on it, let's just finish it when we're at it. That's the one that came off it, so that's bolted up to where that nut is, and that's the piece that it broke off. Alright, so one of the things I always do is I keep any wee bits of pieces of brackets or bits of steel that I get, even if it's an old piece of, for the sake of that compressor for instance, I'll take all the nuts and bolts out of that and I'll keep them. And the pulley, I'll remove of it as well, because you never know. It could let you out of a bad spot if something else broke. In this case, little bracket here. I had this, I don't know what it came off. Could have been off the old milking machine or something. And if I put that on top, turn it around that way. So that hole lines up. And this one would be exactly, only for the bit that broke off, would be exactly right for. So I'm just going to cut it down with an angle grinder here to size. I'm going to take a wee bit off here. And that bracket should fix our problem. But there's the wee bracket we made there now. Solid, ain't going nowhere. Now it's secure with a wee simple little fix there, a few minutes, problem solved. That's a lot of nuts and bolts right there. Thank God I read the instructions inside out. TIG welding set. I've never TIG welded before. Someday for the crack, I will give it a go. So we also have our stick welding lance there too, so. Alright, so it's time to introduce you to a new friend of the family. You stay there. And that is a new welder that we have. Now, before we even show it to you, I want to first say that Sealey did send this out to us back in April. It's been sitting in a box since April. I just hadn't had the right opportunity or time to actually get setting it up and using it. So it's been sitting there quite a while, so thanks to them for being patient. But we get inundated with emails of people trying to send us stuff and trying to get us to try stuff out. At least 95% of the stuff I just say no to. There's several reasons why I don't want to have too much sponsor stuff on my videos, and you'll probably notice that over the last few years. But every now and again, something does show up that actually could make my life a bit easier. This is the welder that I've been using here, and a lot of people do ask what it is. And it's one I got 3-4 years ago. Now, it's the first MIG welder I've ever had, and I've done a lot of welding since I was young, and it was all stick welding. And I've got fairly decent at stick welding. If you're welding on light steel, especially for me, if you're doing any kind of fabrication, MIG is the way to go. It doesn't burn through near as quickly. The only downside I see with it is it's quite heavy. and it's quite hard to move that around. And if I'm moving that from here down to the other workshop down below at the dairy door, that's a long haul, and it's rough enough surfaces as well. It takes a bit of time to move it up and down. That's kind of the downfall. Another one, you have to have your surfaces really clean. So if you had something break in a cattle shed or something like that, that's half covered in dung or whatever, I know me always reach for the stick welder because it can burn through most stuff, and it's just a little bit more rough and ready and can handle that kind of stuff. But this welder here, the Chem, can do all of that. That's the beauty of it. This is an inverter welder, hence the reason it's a lot smaller. So it's a lot more mobile. I can pick that up and I can throw that in the back of the Jeep versus having to haul this around. It's a 2-person job trying to lift that guy up. Also, I don't have to use the gas. I can use flux core wire, which will allow me to MIG weld outside. The other beauty of this one is you've got 3 welders all built into one. You have MIG, arc welding, stick welding, or TIG welding. So it's all built into the one unit. I don't think I'd have to explain really how handy that would be. You can kind of work that out for yourself. So this one here is a Premier 200. That's the model of it. They also sent a trolley with it, which in my opinion is something you kind of have to have with it. If you want to have your gas and all in one unit, it'd really be very awkward without it. Good thing was I wasn't asked to do any major advertising. What I was told to do is use it. Use it for every scenario you can think of and put it through its paces and then see what you think of it down the line. But that's it. Huge thanks to Sealey, and we're going to put them down as the sponsor of today's video. Alright, so we're on to the next wee job here, the Agitator. I want to do a wee job on it. I see you got a little bit of a bend there too. Must have been just pushing again the slats, didn't see that. So one thing that was broken here, and we were always trying to tie it up, was the chain for the PTO guard. So just picked up one of those and after putting that on. But another little thing here is kind of something I have to come back to. I routed out before, but I didn't do a particularly good job on it. It's this guard here is moving. If I push it here with a bit of force, you can see there it moves. It also slides up and down, all because that little bolt there that goes into that kind of a hex hole has come loose. So to put a new bolt in there, it's actually the head of the bolt goes in from the other side. So to do that, I would have to remove this plate. I would have to probably take off the propeller and pull it out. It's quite a bit of work to do that. So an easier option, 13mm bolt in there, and just get a nice bit of weld the whole way around it. The last time I did it, I was just diddling. I didn't do a very good job and I was kind of rushing. So this time we're going to grind it down and we're going to do it right. I don't want to take it off altogether, I'm just trying to loosen it. So I can move it now nice and easily. Move it up. Alright, so this is our bolt. Let's go here and see can we find our nuts and bolts here, get something similar. See, this is what would have been in it. And this is what I'm talking about. This would have come in from the back side. That would have fitted through the square hole. And that's the way it would have sat. So it couldn't torn. So if I cut that top off, there's my square. That'll fit into the hole. There'll be a bit of movement around it. I want that. I want to get the weld in around the nut. Well, that should work. This is what I'm talking about. See? That will fit in there. And then I can fill that void around it with weld. And that'll allow me to get a lovely bit of weld in there. There we go. Right her up. So got a new washer on this. It's hard to use a brush, just put it on very lightly. Put on a couple of coats. The thing about this paint is it dries very, very fast. Now you can use any paint you want. This is going to be covered in the same colour in a very short time anyway, so it make no difference. It's just to protect it. But if you did want to get a cheaper paint, I hear yellow and green is usually always quite cheap to buy, so that's a colour you could think about. So there she is. I'll let that dry for a bit and then I'll put another coat on it. And the only reason I'm doing that is just to protect it. Because as I said, it'll all be the one colour most of the year anyway. But a wee bit of paint on that there will just stop that corrosion from getting any worse. I will need to replace this pipe eventually. Otherwise Nachi's ready to go back to work. The good story behind this agitator is hard to believe when I look back how old it actually is. It was the second bit of equipment I ever bought. I bought a 698T when I was 17, I think it was. And after that I bought this, 2002. It's a long time ago, but it doesn't feel that long ago in my head. I remember well, I bought it over finance, if I remember right, and it cost me €113 a month. But it was worth every penny because we used to go and get the lend of an agitator. It was quite a distance away from here, so you were nearly gone for half the day going to get it, and then you had to leave it back, and they needed it too. Sometimes they'd be using it when I would want it, and it just, yeah. Anyway, that's the story on that. That's whore fixed. Just looking here, this thing, you've seen it before on the channel, it's back. Said there's a few things wrong with it. There's a crack in the chassis somewhere. I haven't seen it yet where it is. It needs welding. And he says the steering fell apart when he's come up the lane, so well, that might be the cause of that. It's nice to take a day every so often and just go around and fix any bits of equipment in that's broke like that, because then when you need it and you are in a panic, it's there, ready to go. That's kind of the way I look at it. But that's it. I'm going to leave it there before it starts teeming rain because it's getting very dark above me. See you in the next one.